Hyvää huomenta kaikille perjantaiseen tietoiskuun taas perinteiseen tapaan. Tänään on vähän erityinen lähetys tiedossa. Meillä on ollut Slash-viikko ja Slash-viikko on siinä mielessä aina hyvä, että saadaan ystäviä maailmalta tulemaan Suomeen. Ja tällä kertaa meillä on Tanskasta Urbantechin tiimi käymässä Slashissa ja meidän Urban 3 tilassa. Ennen kuin mennään keskustelemaan Michaelin kanssa tarkemmin Urbantechistä, pari muistutusta KIRAHubin suunnasta. Eli lanseerattiin meidän tekoäly rakennetusympäristössä verkkokurssi noin kuukausi sitten. Ja tällä viikolla saatiin ulos myös englanninkielinen versio siitä, joten muistakaa käydä innolla suorittamaan kurssia. Siellä on yli 500 innokasta lähtenyt suorittamaan josta kurssia, joten se on hyvin lähtenyt käyntiin. Sen lisäksi meillä on vielä Hekan kanssa innovaatiokilpailu käynnissä, eli vielä lähti ilmoittaa tuon mukaan rakennusten energiatehokkaisiin ratkaisuihin liittyen, joten kannattaa se käydä tarkistamassa myös KIRAHubin sivuilta. But now I think we'll switch the language in English.
Huomenta.
Welcome, Michael Ambjørn from Urbantech from Copenhagen, Denmark. Usually our guests have some slides, but today we won't have any slides, so we will discuss about your journey with Urbantech a little bit deeper. But before we go to that, we also want to kind of dig deeper on our guest background. So
Sure.
Maybe just introduce you a little bit and then tell us how you got there where you are now. What's kind of the journey behind Michael to run Urbantech?
Sure. Well, good morning, huomenta, terve, and great to be back here actually. So as Timo mentioned, I'm Michael, coming in from Copenhagen with the rest of the Urbantech team here, and basically how we ended up here today this morning drinking your fine espresso is actually tying back to a set of discussions we had, I think, back in 2019. And we had some discussions at BlocksHub at the AC Hackathon, I think. And then eventually also up here on a visit when this space was just a building site, actually. So super exciting to now see this space realized into its full formation, basically. So very nice to be back. And the other thing that is important to note that in that journey since 2019, we've also done a number of collaborations, right? So we worked together on a range of things, including, of course, it's quite cool to see here in the corner one of the Hyperion Robotics, what's it called, benches. You said built in 15 minutes or something like that by a robot, right? And then that was a part of a competition you ran, and then we collaborated around that and so on. So why this and why now? Well, we're basically coming to the end of our program. So it's a 3-year program. We've taken through 39 startups through that, 28 of them through the core program, where we partnered them up with our partners. These are big commercial players in the built environment. Kuvi, they're civil engineers. Evi, it's a Danish utility with a local grounding, but I would say global ambitions. And then last but not least, VKR's Velux, so the holding company, and then one of their portfolio companies, Velux, which is a firm that makes overlight windows, which is actually super relevant in Finland because part of the year there's a lot of light and part of the year there is not so much light. So you really need to make sure you let as much of it in when you can. And then we have the support of 2 philanthropists, Realdania, big Danish association, but ultimately also a fund, and then Industriens Fund. And they come at it from 2 slightly different perspectives, right? So Industriens Fund is looking at the competitiveness of the Danish market, and then Realdania is really focused on the built environment and what we might call livability, right? So those are the partners, and as I mentioned, 28 of the startups were matched up with the corporates, and then 13 of them were basically in a mentoring program we ran specifically only for Danish startups. And by that, I'm giving away the fact that in the main program, it was predominantly actually international startups that we brought in. And then, of course, through that, we drew and benefited from and sparred with and exchanged with a lot of ecosystem partners, including yourselves here. And of course, I'm also super excited now that back in 2019, we talked about a glimmer in the corner of your eye. That was you talked about Urbantech Helsinki, and now it exists, right? And in fact, they're here, which is super, super cool. And of course, we've also been doing some work with them, helping them get orientated and so on. Actually, they also came to our recent demo day, which was super cool. So yeah, that's a bit of background.
Yeah, really interesting to hear kind of the whole journey. And 3 years, almost 30 companies. And have you kind of assessed the impact of these 3 years, maybe from different perspectives through individual companies, what they've kind of gotten out of the process, and then kind of societal impact, how you kind of assess your 3-year work for society?
Sure. Well, listen, so we talked about 28 main program, 13 in the mentoring program, and then I actually mentioned what's it called, a different number than when you add up. So one quick result is that actually a couple of the startups from the mentoring program went into the main program, and that shows a progress in itself. But actually, let's talk a little bit about maybe what we set out to do. So when you work with philanthropists, often there are some socioeconomic goals, right? And they were looking for some job creation. They were looking for the generation of additional investment into the field. And the theory or change behind that is that if you can create more investment into startups in specific, you might also then inspire additional investment in general. And when I say startups, I mean specifically an Urbantech type of startup, right? So we're talking about mainly engineering-led, often PhD-led. Often the founders are not quite the ones you read about in the fast magazines, right? They are, working on, dare I say, real world problems, right? They're not trying to solve teenage problems like I can't drive, I can't be bothered to go down and actually make my own pizza and whatever else and have it delivered and so on. They're solving urgent issues in the built environment. So that's also part of it. And then there was also a set of measures around basically activating the ecosystem and so on. But if we sort of chalk up the results, so job-wise, we came in at 110, and actually we're going to go way over that by the time we are over, so 110%. On funding, we had I'd say quite modest goal of 50 million kroner, a stretch goal of 100, which is about, let's say, 12 million euros or something like that. And we're actually coming in 25. So we're coming in at the moment, 199% performance against the stretch goal. And actually, one of the startups, and this is where I say capital at risk, really small print, only invest if you are comfortable as an investor and whatever else. But actually, I'm very excited that that one of our startups, Cobots, very cool Danish construction robot startup, that basically augments the carpenter. It's actually a super cool story. So it's about not replacing the human worker, but actually augmenting, supporting, and actually making for a safer work environment. And then they're actually raising right now on Cedars. So if you look up on Cedars, the crowd equity platform, you could actually potentially push us into the 200%. So go right ahead and drop that million in there, right? So in fact, it wouldn't even be a million to get to the 200% point at this point, right? We're so close, 199 point something anyway. So those are some of the results, and then the core bit back to our overall thing. What was the core idea behind this? Urbantech in itself is just a term, right? But actually, it's behind us here. This is our one slide, right? So this is post slush. It's been a slightly long few days, so we decided to take more of a fireside chat approach today, and. So we are here to accelerate the development of sustainable cities, and that's, I think, something that KIRAHub is also aligned into. And so what's the theory of change? What's the logical model to make that happen? Well, in Urbantech, we have basically one idea, We have a few more, but we have one core idea that overrides everything else we do, and that is the belief that if you take really clever, smart, fairly early stage, engineering-led, often startups, and basically match them up with large, existing, well-established, mature ecosystem players on the commercial side, then when you basically smash the innovative side into the established, you can actually create something that potentially can be rolled out at scale, right? The built environment is not coming. It is here. A lot of the houses that we're going to need in the next 50 years are being built, but a lot of them are already also here. So it's fitting into something that is a relatively slow-moving industry. It's one that is fairly resistant to change, fairly resistant to innovation. I think there's sometimes talk about a 1% improvement over the years compared to other industries and so on. And it's also one that has a quite dark record when it comes to basically CO2 and material reuse and so on. So that one idea is basically the pilots, right? So we take these startups through a pilots process, 12-week, very fast-paced effort. And the core measure of that is a metric in itself. So we set out to do 40 of these, and then we came in with 42. So I think that's a really solid result there as well. And then what's actually much more exciting are the stories themselves, right? So can you put transparent solar cells on a window and generate electricity? Yes, you can, right? Can you, make actually more sunlight come through a window by changing the coating? Yes, you can. Can you, can you analyze the data from multiple disparate activities and basically fit them in so that decision makers can actually make strategic decisions that are good for the future? Yes, you can, right? And then these are just some of the examples, right, that come up. So without going on for too long here, that's just a quick outline. So solid delivery on fundraising, jobs, and then actually ultimately the innovation which is needed.
Yeah, that's really impressive numbers already, and really kind of good examples of some of those solutions and pilots that you've been doing. Let's talk more a little bit about the term urban tech and kind of in relation to the smart cities or sustainable cities. When you started, that was quite a new term, actually. Yeah. You were one of the first ones to adopt it.
Yeah.
I don't know if New York was the first one or how did it go, but how do you actually see the scope of the term urban tech?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question, right? Because the tech world loves jargon, quite frankly, right? And sometimes it's helpful, and quite often it is not, right? But the key thing here is that a lot of the ecosystems think of themselves and organize themselves in verticals, right? So fintech, kind of a vertical, prop tech, kind of a vertical, health tech, and so on, right? And often the cluster organizations, so this is part of the whole EU structure, part of a global movement of clusters and so on, are also organized in these verticals and so on. And what we've done in urban tech is to take actually a value chain approach. So we're actually cutting across this. So for example, from the mentoring program, we had a startup called Legacy that actually thought of itself originally as a fintech startup, and actually realized that maybe they're a little bit more PropTech actually. In fact, they sit with the PropTech lab in Copenhagen inside BlocksHub. And I think that realization came in part through this program. And then they went on to get a big pension fund as a customer. And of course, that's the crossover, right? Because pension funds, well, that's kind of finance, right? But what do pension funds own? Quite a lot of property, right? Do they need to account for the CO2? Yes, they do, right? And you can see, so that's one of many very practical examples of a value chain approach. With regards to who got there first, I don't actually know. I don't think we can claim ownership. I think also these terms, in order for them to be useful, shouldn't be proprietary. They should be industry terms, right? But I'm seeing the term pop up more and more. Definitely, as you mentioned, in New York. And of course, we admire the work that UrbanX does, for example. Their scope is probably a little bit broader than ours, And then, of course, also we've loved collaborating with like the Clean Fight, for example, if you're familiar with them, also out of New York. So it's a really interesting development, and we'll see where it goes. But I think there will always be a need for the vertical approach, and there will actually always be even more need for cutting across.
Yeah, definitely. We actually made a study here at Mario 01. There's almost 200 companies now, startups and growth companies here today, and we started looking at which of those actually have relevance for the built environment sector.
Right.
And it was actually quite surprising result. 1/4, about 50 companies, have relevance for the built environment sector.
Okay.
And actually, most of them don't even realize that. So they don't categorize themselves as PropTech, ConTech, Urbantech, or kind of built environment.
So basically just as tech.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So it's kind of most of the new innovation actually happen between these verticals, and then many of them can be kind of utilized in many verticals. So the companies themselves don't often realize that they actually belong to some of those verticals.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. What about kind of the smart city as a term has been there for ages?
Exactly. So you
and we actually have a lot of smart city activities going on here at KIRAHub and Urban Tree as well. We just recently visited the Smart City Expo in Barcelona. It was now organized on site as well after the COVID, and kind of the evolution there has started from kind of technological, data-driven approach. Now there's been more and more discussion around sustainability, social aspect, kind of how cities can be more inclusive. How can we actually accelerate social innovations in cities, and then of course the ecological perspective as well. But unfortunately, we didn't actually see that too much in Barcelona this year. How do you see, if you assess kind of your journey with the Urbantech process and the 30 companies, have you seen that side, social innovation?
Let me address that very directly. So listen, first of all, smart city, originally actually it's a marketing term from Cisco, right? And IBM also used it for a number of campaigns. And full disclosure, I'm an old IBMer, so I can totally relate to the need for large organizations to find some terms to kind of use as a kind of way to convene groups of people to start a conversation and so on. But let's make no mistake, there's a commercial drive behind it that is not coming from back to the verticals, right? It's not coming from the ground up. It's coming from the outside in, which, by the way, can be a good disruptive force to create some new ideas. But it's got a storied past, meaning it's been around for a long time now. I think we passed peak smart city. I would actually argue that peak smart city probably was 2018 or 2019 or something like that. And we need to move on a little bit from it, because it is, quite frankly, without going into the Department of Philosophy here, but it's probably a little bit too utilitarian. And there's a need for a little bit more thinking around the fact that cities are made up of people. Technology is useful but incidental. It is a tool, right? A hammer is a hammer, right? So I've seen a shift there, and actually we just this week, wow, it's been a long week, ran our concluding sort of big finale conference, and we had a set of speakers from around the world, one of whom actually had also recently spoken at the Smart City Expo. But what I really took away from it was that when we had a CEO panel of our three startup founders, Robert from Breeze Technologies, we had Sophia from Parametric Solutions, and we had Johnny from Infotiles, and all moderated by Lone Pfeiffer from Velux. And the key thing at the very end, she asked this question. So we've been on stage here talking about all this, and you never mentioned money. Why are you doing this, right? And their basic purpose, they want to change the world. They want to make the world a better place, each in their own way, right? So parametric, it's about, well, it's in the word, parametric design, right? Generating thousands of design options very quickly so that they can be better, and not just for financial ends, but so that you can take account of sustainability needs, right? And in the case of Robert, it's about air quality, right? So basically recognizing that air quality is a massive issue. You can't really see it, but you can definitely feel it. And then in the case of Johnny with Infotiles, the ability to basically take all these data streams that are basically being generated by the by now billions of IoT devices and whatever else that are probably not being used properly. And meaning used properly in generating strategic insight that can make sure that you make adjustments not just today, tomorrow, but actually think 100 years hence, because that's what's needed.
Yeah, really, really good points. So now, after the intensive 3-year journey, I'm sure we're kind of still not that far with kind of the urban tech development. I think there's a lot more work to be done. How you see the future of urban tech? What should be done next? What kind of mechanisms should we maybe develop around the world in different countries to really accelerate these objectives?
I think first of all, it's a great question. Secondly, I was kind of hoping to ask you, Timo, that you could maybe answer that one, but I can come up with a few ideas if you like to start off the conversation. So I think the first thing that we realize, which is not a new realization, it is actually as old as time itself. Humanity has always managed to put itself into little tribes or vertical silos, whatever the name, buckets, whatever you like to call it. And we just need to remember that all the way back to the beginning of time, that we need to jump out of our respective boxes and buckets and actually talk to each other a little bit more, right? And we need to remember the humanity in all of this, that is all about people ultimately. Then we need to be ambitious, and we come out of a time where there's been quite a bit of focus on, for example, cost saving and efficiency and so on. But efficiency and effectiveness are not the same thing. And something that is effective might not be efficient, and vice versa. And in either way, those are kind of almost terms out of the economic department, if we use that. And I say we need to talk about how can we create cities that actually, the cities that we and those who come after us want to live in. And in practical terms, we're going to need a range of different players, right? We're going to need the water pipes that somebody laid down for us maybe 50, maybe 100 years ago, right? But we're also going to need to create some new structures. So for that, we need startups. We need spaces like KIRAHub. We need conversations like this. And then we need the willingness to go out and actually try things out. So a lot of this is actually cultural work. It's about learning how to get those collaborations going. So there's a very, very strong role for what you might call facilitation, for helping people basically get through structured, constructive, challenging processes that actually drive them forward. And then we're back at the same thing. The technology is exciting, but it is incidental. A hammer is a hammer is a hammer, right? So it's only if you can put it to good use that it's really worthwhile.
Definitely, and I'm actually really pleased and even lucky that we actually have a new mechanism now in Finland starting to support especially the development of sustainable cities, but also overall low carbon built environment. So we do have a new program now starting with quite a lot of funding, altogether 40 million euros.
So I hear, congratulations.
And thank you. So this is a good opportunity for Finnish companies and cities and research institutes to start developing new solutions together over the next couple of years. But also, not just for Finland, but also there's an opportunity for collaboration between different European European countries and companies there to partner up with some of the Finnish players and take that opportunity together.
If I could just kind of speak directly to say basically people would benefit from getting with the program, so to speak. And when I say getting with the program, is taking the time out from just purely operational, day-to-day, one foot in front of the other. We also need that, right? We do need the water to run in a highly predictable manner and whatever else. At the same time, there are so many challenges that need people's energy, enthusiasm, and unique insights, right? And that will, that can be done on your own. By all means, go out and do it. If you're a large organization, go find yourself a startup and so on, or vice versa. But at the same time, there are a lot of programs out there. And if you don't put your hand up, if you don't put your foot forward, if you don't basically step up, you're going to miss out from some opportunities to basically make cities more livable. And then that would be a shame and a pity.
Definitely good advice already there, and that's kind of what we learned already in the previous KIRAHub program, that companies that really put themselves out there and really open up and made transparent what they do, and kind of were like pioneers doing this one thing for the first time. That was huge positive kind of cycle that started for those companies with new collaborations, with new partnerships and clients. So definitely we need that here as well. Our time is ending soon. You already kind of started those kind of advice and takeaways there, but we have mostly our Finnish ecosystem watching this morning. What would be kind of your key takeaway for our viewers online?
I have something very practical and I'd say actionable, right? So for example, in our Urbantech mentoring program, what we drew on there was a key piece of research insight, which is that it's the startups that are able to take on advisors and use them well. And that doesn't mean necessarily doing what the advisors are telling them, but using them well. And those are the ones that prevail and thrive. And actually, that's true for everybody. Wherever you are, is the ability to work with others and take on board and use information in a structured and constructive way. So the closing advice is take advantage of programs like Urbantech Helsinki, take advantage of everything that's available through KIRAHub, come visit Blogs Hub in Copenhagen and so on. And then just the final thing, I can see the clock here in the back ticking down. The final thing is that at the very end of whatever you do, don't forget to take a moment, stop and give thanks, right? So in the case of Urbantech, right, there's a whole crew who's been behind this. We have a list of hundreds of names who've contributed, right? And you're on it too, right? But also the team, right? So to Lynn, Laura, Corinna, Barbara, Michael, and all the way back to the beginning, Rasmus, Emma, and so on. There's so many people who put time and effort into things like this, and it's really worthwhile to take the time to give thanks. And so that's in part why we're here today, right? Because a good opening needs to come to a good kind of closure, because then that means that when you close something, you potentially can open maybe even 2 or 3 doors afterwards again. And I'm sure you and I will be working again together very soon, if not already tomorrow. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and really inspiring discussion this morning. I really enjoyed that, and really great to have you finally here at our space as a guest as well. Nyt on aika lopetella tän aamun keskustelu. Toivottavasti saitte siitä paljon irti. Ensi viikon perjantaina jatkuu taas Tietoiskut. Aiheena on tällä kertaa vieraana on Metropoliasta Anna-Stiina ja kertoo vähän Metropolian datajohdetusta rakentamisesta tarkemmin. Mutta sen pidemmittä puheitta oikein hyvää viikonloppua kaikille. Kiitos.